Welcome to Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. I'm your host, Kim Todd, and on Digging Deeper, we have in-depth discussions with our extension experts about important landscape topics. Tonight, we're going to be discussing something pulled from the headlines, murder hornets. Thank you for joining us once again for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. Every once in a while, we get some horde of invading insects that threaten our lives, and the new kid on the block is the so-called murder hornet. Here to discuss this with us tonight is our extension entomologist, Jody Green. Hello, Jody.
Hi.
You have props.
Yes, but I do not have any murder hornets.
That's good, because I'm not really in the mood to get stung by a murder hornet or something like that. So there was a huge amount of hype about this in the media. You probably got more questions than you absolutely wanted to answer. Do you want to tell us exactly what is a murder hornet?
Yeah, so the murder hornet is actually called the Asian giant hornet. And it is real, and a lot of things that you may have read are likely true. However, there's a little bit of context to it, and they are not here to murder humans or hurt humans. And right now, they've only been found in Vancouver, BC, Canada, and surrounding areas in Washington state. So they're not here, but they were in the news again today because they did find another one in Canada and someone stepped on it. So that's what they are. And usually hornets we call like a giant wasp. And in Nebraska, we actually don't have a true hornet here.
Really? We just have wasps.
Right, and people call big wasps hornets. So there is a bald-faced hornet, which is actually a yellowjacket, and we do have in the U.S. that is established is the European hornet, but it isn't close to Nebraska. So it's been here for years in the U.S., but it's not in the middle.
So last time I checked, it's kind of a long distance between the West Coast and Nebraska.
Yes.
What do we expect? Or, I know people are keeping their eyes on this beast.
Right. And I think of everything, and we've had a couple of weeks where it's calmed down. So we did have a lot of questions about various things. Is this a murder hornet? Is this a murder hornet? Crickets, spiders, who knows? Anything that flew or was somewhere, it was questioned. So we've had a little break. We've had a lot of extension entomologists and people throughout a lot of universities weigh in and put the facts out there and calm people down. So that's good. But the problem is for beekeepers. So these hornets are they can be very detrimental to people who keep honeybees, so beehives, because they prey on other insects, big insects, and also honeybees. So they're nutritious. So I would say it is important if you were in an area that they may become established, that we should be looking out for that. So it wasn't the way entomologists hate the word murder hornet, but it's a way that we got together and had the public on high alert. So hopefully they'll be able to find out if there are more anywhere, but they will be in Washington state likely.
Okay, so it's certainly dangerous to honeybees because they decimate a hive. Mm-hmm. What about the actual danger to human beings?
Okay, so if you're allergic to bees or wasp stings anyway, it's going to hurt you. It's going to be bad, right? So people who are allergic to bees or wasps and their venom, we want to make sure they've got their EpiPen or they've got an emergency plan. They do have more toxic venom, and you probably don't have to be stung as many times. So that's why you want to just avoid, any stinging insect if it is nearby and you are allergic. But because we have no exposure to that particular hornet, it shouldn't be a problem for us, right?
But besides which, we have a lot of eyes on that right now. So.
Right.
If anybody finds it anywhere, obviously,
yeah,
we will let people know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Most definitely. All right, so you brought some props, and another question I want to ask you is, do you want to describe or show some of the examples of the other insects that people would confuse with the murder hornet?
Okay, so I think the biggest one that I actually don't have here today is going to be the cicada killer wasp, and that is something that we've had. If you've had them in the past, you will likely have them again, because that means you have like the perfect habitat. That means you've got full sun, loose soils, well drained, and they'll be back. But they come out with the cicadas that come out each year, so that's what they hunt and that's their prey. But they're large and they fly very rapidly, but they are not aggressive and they're not coming after people. The female is busy digging burrows in the ground and then catching cicadas, and the male may act territorial, but he's got no stinger. And that's probably the one that we would be most confused about, being, an Asian giant hornet. So we want to warn people about that. But some of the things I have now are wasps that we are getting a lot of calls for. Paper wasps and yellowjackets are starting to build their nests, and in the usual places. So paper wasps, I've got some examples of some kind of start nests. They've got they call it an umbrella nest. So they've got like a single tier, but they kind of what would you say? They put that under a like a protected place, right? Like so under windows and doors, overhangs, eaves, fences, things like that. And a lot of times if you look at it, you will actually see the wasp like staring right at you. But what she's doing is creating her first set of workers. So she's laying eggs in each one of these cells, and then when those develop, those will be the female workers that will go and forage and then work on the nest, and she becomes an egg layer. But right now she's still building. So if you see one of these, knock it down at night. There's only one female right there right now, so this is the safest time to do it, a time of year, but also the safest time is going to be at nighttime when she's there. Use a fly swatter if you want. And then we've also got yellowjackets that are starting up their nests, and they often can be in underground rodent burrows. So if you know you've had voles close by, or moles, that's something you want to look for. And also, they could also be in wall voids. So if you've got gaps around your house, they can start a nest there. And what their nest looks like, so underground, they can do aerial nests like this. So we call this a hornet's nest, but this is actually made by a yellowjacket. And you can see these aerial nests will be hanging in trees like this, and their entrance will be at the bottom. So they've got one entrance, but what it looks like in here is a series of tiers. So I've got an example here that a nice master gardener dropped off for me as a gift, because these are the kind of presents I get. But you can see, so for a paper wasp, they only have one layer and it's open. And a yellowjacket, they've got several layers and it's enclosed usually in the paper. And they find that paper off of like weathered mulch, off of like unstained decks, fences, all those things. If you see a wasp there, it will be like chewing with its mouth part and doing some weird thing with its front legs, because it's finding that paper pulp to make this stuff.
So do the underground ones look like the big one too?
So the underground ones will look like this.
Look like this?
They'll have, so this is underground, let's say. There would be a tunnel, like the rodent burrow hole here would be a really large entrance to that burrow, but then the entrance would be underneath here. So
this time of year, somebody who has the voles or knows they've had the rodent problem, would you actually see activity going underground? Or
you usually don't. You may see like the one queen right now flying in and out of there, and then in a month you may see a couple of the workers under there. But so this is what a yellowjacket looks like, and this is a paper wasp. So they look a little bit different. You can see that, the top ones are bees. That's just if you want to know the difference between, bees and wasps, or for the bumblebees. But so down here, these are paper wasps, right? And then this one is a European paper wasp, and the other one is a yellowjacket. So. And I've been getting so many calls about these. Right now, they're probably the least aggressive that they are. in the end of summer, fall, they start coming out at picnics around trash cans. So you want to really just inspect those areas that you see them building year after year and get rid of that nest.
So what about the big bumbles?
So the big bumbles, okay, so the reason I put the bumblebee here is because they also nest underground in some cases in rodent burrows. They'll also nest in compost piles and sheds and under items. A lot of times gardeners will call in the fall and they're like, I want to use my compost pile or I want to use my shed, and there's bumblebees there. But I want to tell people, so these are pollinators. If you see them right now, shoo her away. Maybe she can build a nest somewhere else. But they're annual colonies. All of these are annual colonies. So they will abandon that nest in the fall. So if you can just deal with it a little bit and avoid that shed, they'll die. But right now, in the spring, is when, if you don't want them there, shoo them away. And then the two here I've got, it's actually carpenter bees. And the difference between a carpenter bee and a bumblebee is that the carpenter bees have really hairless, shiny abdomens. So shiny butt there. I don't know how many are out right now, but a couple weeks ago there were a lot of carpenter bees bugging people because they're a little bit of a structural pest as well.
Exactly, and we did get some calls on Backyard Farmer. People said they saw what they thought was a bee drilling holes in the soffit or doing something like that.
Yeah, they love, I mean, that's where they nest, is in wood, unfortunately. So they're a pollinator that we try to protect, but it's really hard to fight for them. Just because of how
they're destroying your house.
But when the murder hornet headlines came out, they were the prime, I guess, photo that I would get, and people asking because they were flying over the house and close to people on their decks.
So just looking at what you're holding up there, what is the scale relationship to a murder hornet compared to bumblebees?
So I would say
others?
I mean, the European hornet is going to be like very similar in size to the Asian giant hornet, which would probably be like this big. It's going to be 2 inches long, and that's why I'm sorry I don't have a cicada killer wasp, because they are pretty big. But and they've got distinct markings. So they have a really big head, huge head, and it's bright yellow. And then their abdomen for the Asian giant hornet, it's black with yellow stripes. Whereas if you see any of these, they've got kind of like patterns on their abdomen. So.
Okay. You know, we'd love to hear from you as we are talking about this on Facebook. Tell us what you love, tell us what you don't love. Give us some ideas for other topics if there's something that comes to mind where you would like to have us spend a little bit more time than that 3 minutes or lightning round seconds on Backyard Farmer, because this is fun and this is really interesting. Okay, Jody, so what sort of a structure does that murder wasp build?
Okay, so these, the Asian giant hornet, they actually nest in the ground. And where they are from in Asia, it's often, I don't know if it's like in mountain ranges, but it's not really too close to urban areas. And they have an extensive, like maybe 5 tiers underground. And so that's why they're really investigating over there on the West Coast. But yeah, I don't think it's, you know, around a structure, and it's not going to be something like this. So yeah, every organism has their habitat, and so yeah, we just don't know a whole lot of how far they can move on their own, and where they would prefer to nest in terms of like elevation, and if they could across the U.S.
And do we even know, since you mentioned annual for some of these, do we even know whether they overwinter?
So they are also annual colonies. So I mean that's good, but it's also the reason why. So the reason why it's taken, I guess, a long time, and right now is what we're waiting for someone out west to find them because of this, right? So if there's only one foundress, so that's a fertilized overwintering queen starting a nest, we need to find her. Or as an entomologist or researchers at West, like we need to find her, and we have to find her building the nest. Maybe, you know, and so because in the winter that colony dies, and the fertilized females will go hide overwinter somewhere. Then when it's springtime, they all come out. And this is the true for all of these other singing insects here too. they find somewhere to nice place to build their nest, and then they start doing that really slowly until it's not slow anymore because all their larvae pupae and turn into other adults.
Right.
So that's why people are waiting. And then out west, they also are setting up traps so that when there are workers, they're trying to feed them and attract them to the trap so that they would be able to find them right away and eliminate, find that nest and eliminate them. So we have really good, big faith in like Washington Department, Department of Ag. So yeah.
To be able to keep their
track of it. There are great websites out there. Their website is great. If you want to know more, they've got, PowerPoint videos of, boring scientists like me talking about it. So it's more informative, less, flashy, but there's also great videos on how Asian honeybees actually defend their nests from the Asian giant hornet, because when they evolve together, they adapt, right? And so that's why it's hard for an invasive species that they don't have a natural enemy, and our European honeybees probably don't have that defense mechanism, right? They're vulnerable. So there's that, but they've also got a lot of like lookalikes. That are out there. If you see things that look yellow and black and you might want to freak out about it, what you can do. And then there's also this Facebook page. You can go to Facebook, it's called Hornets, and you can see like in real time people posting things from Washington State. So you can keep updated. You don't have to join it. You just spy on it like me to find out what's going on because you're just so curious. So.
Exactly. Well, and you mentioned briefly how you can keep from getting stung. So the positives are the pollinators. So we just sort of stay out of their territory. But the Asian hornet is not a pollinator, or it is?
Well, I mean, it probably isn't. Right. Because it feeds on other animals, right? And so, and like the European hornet that we don't have here, they have been known to like get to twigs and start destroying some trees even to get that sugar,
get the sugar
sap and
paper.
stuff.
Yeah.
So you'll see them that way. I mean, I think we're pretty lucky. Did I say that? We're really lucky in Nebraska, right?
To be in the middle.
Yeah, so, and it's good, I think, and on their own, they don't move very far. There's the Rocky Mountains between us and them. There are a lot of different things that they've got to overcome before they even make it here, and hopefully,
they won't.
They won't,
right.
And we've got a lot of researchers, looking out, and so many citizen scientists too, on the lookout with all those pages and sightings, and so, yeah.
So instead of being worried about that one, enjoy nature, and when the cicada killers come out, or the cicada wasps, we'll get the calls.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll answer the calls.
You shouldn't be any more worried than the other, usual suspects that we have. We just say, like, if they're ground nesting, don't wear bare feet. If something lands on you, look before you swat it, because if it's caught up against your body, you step on it or swat at it or something like that. Handle it. That's when you're likely to get stung. I mean, they do it out of defense.
Right.
They don't usually want to murder you.
Right, and and speaking from experience, do not stick your pitchfork into the bottom of the compost pile in the fall before you figure out whether something is in there. Yeah.
Just gotta
just
kind of look for buzzing or
something.
Looking. I mean, people get stung by bumblebees when they're mowing the lawn.
Right.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
they just don't know they're there, and they're not doing it they're doing it to protect their nest, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, that is all the time we have for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. We want to say thanks to Jody, of course, for coming by to help us with this important and interesting topic. We'll be back next week with another discussion about gardening topics that matter to you. Do be sure to watch Backyard Farmer live every Thursday, 7 p.m. Central on NET. Thanks for digging deeper with Backyard Farmer.